Hello, hello! Welcome back, everyone, to DnD Backstory and to the start of another group of How to Play videos. As always, I'm INSCOE, and today we're going to be taking a dive into Halwyn Heartbreaker Holthrop, a half-elven barbarian and fighter, an athletic prodigy and blacklisted professional athlete adrift, left clutching onto pieces of a life he had no hand in shattering. If you haven't already done so, make sure you check out his story. Links to his backstory video, as well as to all of his free downloadable character sheets, can be found in the description below. Now that you're up to speed, you're probably aware that we're once again diving into the realm of homebrew, although we're not straying too terribly far from where we've explored before. The main chassis, I think that's how you pronounce it, the main chassis, chassis? Who knows? The crux of our playmaking barbarian is the Path of the Gridiron subclass designed by Johnny Stanton IV. Most of you are probably familiar with Johnny and his work by now, but just in case you aren't, he's an outstanding dungeon master and player, a once and future fullback for the Cleveland Browns, and an outspoken voice championing inclusivity and allyship in athletics and tabletop gaming. He's also got a hell of a knack for drawing on his experiences as an athlete and turning them into well-designed D&D subclasses. He's doing great work, and we're thrilled to feature his voice and subclass for Heartbreaker Holthrop.
Hey everyone, Johnny Stanton here, and I wanted to take a moment to talk to you about the Path of the Gridiron Barbarian and what it took to be able to build and develop it. Now, the whole idea in actually building the subclass came from wanting to work with Unite the Realm, who made the t-shirt for it. They built out features for a t-shirt for a Gridiron Barbarian, and I kind of went in on the backside to actually build out what the features were. So we named the titles, we named them Rushing Cleave, we named them Full-Blooded Blitz, and I had to go in from the backside to actually to develop what the features actually were, mechanically how they interacted with the battlefield and with the people around you. Now, in developing the Path of the Gridiron Barbarian, I wanted a barbarian that could bounce around the battlefield just like a running back bounces around the football field. I wanted somebody who was kind of monk-like in their ability to get to one opponent to another to be able to help out your allies, as well as get a bunch of battlefield movement from your whole team. The final feature, Playmaker, is actually a way to get everybody on the battlefield into the perfect position on the battlefield, not get locked down as quickly as possible, probably on your first turn. It was really fun to be able to develop class features that felt very football-like. You know, it's not specifically to a running back or a linebacker or an offensive lineman, because all of these physical capabilities are things that every football player has. And it's so fun for me to be able to develop something that is such a perfect mix of D&D and football that it's something that I'm really excited to be able to play. I've got so many character concepts that's a little bit lower on the list, but I know that when I play the Path of the Gridiron Barbarian, I'm going to basically be playing myself, but just like a heightened version of myself. I'll probably be bringing in some characteristics of my teammates or people that I've played against, and just get a caricature of what a football player is in the fantasy world. Thanks again for checking out the subclass. Now we're going to kick it back to Graham to be able to get into a little bit more of the crunchy stuff.
All barbarians are tanky, high-damage frontliners. All fighters are weapons masters and highly skilled combatants. So what gives Halwyn a different niche compared to characters like our own Sergeant Litswift or Yaxney Ironmaw, or from the barbarians and fighters seen at tables across the world? With the Path of the Gridiron, we have a barbarian whose rage evokes feelings of precision and explosiveness, rather than mindless fury and rampaging destruction. The subclass features expand on the mobility of the barbarian class, and give our Maulballer extra opportunities to knock enemies prone and provide crowd control on multiple targets, as well as eventually increasing the mobility and efficiency of an entire adventuring party. In short, the Path of the Gridiron helps turn a barbarian from a rampaging meat shield into a highly lethal skirmisher and shot caller, and when coupled with action surge and some battlemaster maneuvers, it's no wonder that Halwyn functions in just the same way in an adventuring party as he did on a sports team, as a highly mobile controller, providing support for his team while still more than capable of outstanding damage and survivability as a solo combatant. And so, mechanically, Halwyn practically built himself, a highly physical, highly technical wonderkind. But from a character perspective, the idea of taking a character in the prime of their youth, one who is an expert in his craft and living a life of luxury, then making him want to give it all up and start from scratch as what is essentially a mercenary or a monster hunter, it seemed a daunting task, especially since, and this may come as a shock, I personally have never really been much of a sports guy. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. I couldn't relate to Halwyn as an athlete, sure, but someone adrift due to circumstances beyond their power, an individual confronted with a need for a fresh start, skilled but hopeless and directionless, in need of the right opportunity to get themselves started on a wholesome path once again? Who hasn't felt lost and dejected? And from there, Halwyn sprang to life. He's a hyper-competitive, extremely talented warrior and athlete, but those lifelong aspects of him are now waging a war against his sudden shift in perspective and circumstance. Heartbreaker is a young man desperate to prove himself, to others, and himself both, that he's still elite in his craft, even if he's starting from the ground up. A lifetime of playing on close-knit teams has left him with an instinct for falling into sync with his allies, for understanding their capabilities and how to best apply them to the task at hand, and his recent change in fortune has left him more in tune with the lives and concerns of passerby than he ever has been previously. Heartbreaker might not be the party face type giving inspiring speeches, that's what all the charisma casters are for, but he is nonetheless a leader, and players should keep that in mind when bringing Halwyn to the table. He's the kind of tactician used to adjusting plans on the fly, and he inspires and guides his allies simply by nature of being the hardest working man on that field of battle, positioning himself to be the one losing the most blood, sweat, and tears out there. He'll never say no to a challenge or a chance to show off, but by the same token, he's the first friend to notice something's off and pull someone aside for a swig of water and a breather in the shade. Halwyn is certainly not the first character we've released who carries some well-earned but irritating arrogance, yet Heartbreaker developed that confidence by nature of pure determination, without dragon scales, innate magical talent, or the touch of the divine to bring him to the pinnacle of his abilities. And his drive to make it to the top elevates anyone determined to try to keep up with him, whether athlete or adventurer. So that's who Halwyn is. Now let's break down what he can do. Heartbreaker, as we've previously stated, is a barbarian fighter multiclass, dipping into Battlemaster, but maintaining that Path of the Gridiron Barbarian as his main class, as it were. We've talked in the past about how multiclassing can get complicated, but Barbarian and Fighter play so well together that the only real choice to make in this build is to put 3 or 4 levels into Fighter. Neither of these classes have to worry about mixing spellcasting stats or losing spell level progression, and both typically rely on strength and constitution as their primary stats, so the multiclass doesn't risk making this character overly dependent on multiple ability scores. For the purposes of our build, Halwyn takes his first 5 levels in Barbarian, picking up the Path of the Gridiron. We'll then dip into Fighter for 3 levels before swinging back into Barbarian for a final build of Barbarian 7, Fighter 3. This is mostly due to the synergy of the Barbarian's level 7 features with Halwyn's concept as a highly mobile frontliner, but players may prefer a 6-4 split in order to pick up a feat or ability score increase at Fighter level 4. Regardless of all that, at level 1 things are pretty simple for young Heartbreaker. We've previously stated that strength and con are going to be our main priorities for ability scores. The former directly correlates to Halwyn's ability to damage targets and or knock them prone, and a high constitution allows us to make the most of the Barbarian's D12 hit die, while also boosting armor class thanks to unarmored defense. After distributing points and bumping both of these scores to 16 and +3 modifiers, our next priority is going to be dexterity. This plays into initiative, some very important saving throws, and armor class, so that stat is sitting at 14 and a +2. From here, it's really just a matter of player preference and some minor differences in saving throw modifiers, because nothing in Halwyn's kit relies on any of the 3 mental stats, and we don't have enough points left to make any of them too significant. Reflecting his status as a shot caller and an on-field tactician, we've placed his intelligence at a 12 and a +1. From here, we left charisma at a -1 just because perception is such a critical skill, and it plays off of our now +0 wisdom. But I want to emphasize something here. Don't look at that negative modifier and think you have to lean into it too hard. Adventurers are all incredible examples of their peoples and their crafts. your average commoner is +0s across the board. So please remember that a -1 charisma mod doesn't mean you have to play Halwyn as an awkward schmuck, just as a -1 intelligence modifier doesn't make a character stupid, or a -wisdom mod inherently make a character clueless. To no one's surprise, our saving throw proficiencies are strength and constitution, and Halwyn has proficiency in medium and light armor, shields, and all simple and martial weapons. The athlete background was a no-brainer selection for our champion Maulballer, and between that, base barbarian, and his nature as a half-elf, we've now got proficiency in the athletics, acrobatics, insight, perception, intimidation, and persuasion skills. We also get all the usual fun half-elf features: dark vision, resistance to charms and immunity to magical sleep, and fluency in common, elvish, and halfling. Barbarian 1 comes with two of their most iconic features: rage and unarmored defense. As a bonus action, Halwyn can enter his rage, gaining extra physical damage and damage resistance to our strapping young lad. Unarmored defense draws on his constitution and dexterity stats to establish an armor class roughly on par with medium armor. And important to note here is that wearing a shield still qualifies Heartbreaker for this feature. Most barbarians you see in games these days are two-handed weapon specialists, and that's definitely the best way to maximize their damage. However, Halwyn might also choose to take inspiration from the original pop culture barbarian and go for a Conan-esque sword and board style. Anticipate the needs of you and your party, and experiment with both styles of gameplay to find your preferences. Level 2 brings in another couple of features. Danger Sense means that if you're rolling a dex save against an effect you can see, you're doing it with advantage. And Reckless Attack allows Heartbreaker to make all of his melee attacks on a turn with advantage at the cost of granting advantage to melee attacks against him. Given Rage's damage reduction and the massive damage barbarians are capable of putting down, this is usually a price worth paying. And then at level 3, we get to the Path of the Gridiron. The Rushing Cleave feature allows Halwyn to make one melee attack against multiple targets, provided they are all within his melee range and he's moved at least 10 feet on his turn prior to this attack. Rushing Cleave can only be used once per short rest, and while for now it can only target 2 targets, or 1 additional target, that number will increase at higher barbarian levels. From base barbarian, at level 3 we also go up to 3 rages per short rest, and the optional feature Primal Knowledge allows Halwyn to pick up survival proficiency here. At level 4, we have our first ability score increase or chance to take a feat, but important to note here is that due to the way we've structured this build, Halwyn will not be receiving another ASI or feat until at least PC level 11, potentially even later. As such, this decision is a little weightier than it is on some of our other characters. The Sentinel feat is very tempting, but very soon our warrior will not be lacking for crowd control options or reactions, and an upcoming Path of the Gridiron feature adds a redundancy to taking that feat. So we're keeping it simple. Strength to 18, increasing our chance to hit and the damage we deal. Level 5 is our last foray into Barbarian for a bit, but the reason we postponed the multi-classing until now becomes readily apparent here. Extra attack doubles the amount of attacks our Barbarian is capable of making anytime he takes the attack action, and postponing access to this feature on a Martial is something you almost never want to do. We've also been talking about Halwyn picking up mobility for some time now, and now we finally start to see it. Fast movement bumps our speed here from 30 to 40, provided that Halwyn isn't wearing heavy armor. Now we start our 3-level venture into the fighter class, and the first 2 levels here are pretty simple. Fighter 1 comes with Second Wind, a small bonus action self-heal, and our choice of a fighting style. The only real choice here is between dueling or great weapon fighting, and we've opted for the former. Great weapon fighting is great for absolutely maximizing damage, but dueling bumps up Halwyn's damage output while he's sword and boarding, and in the interest of survivability and versatility, we've opted for that. Level 2 in Fighter brings us to my favorite feature in the game, Action Surge. Once per long rest, take a second action on a given turn. That's it. And as understated as that might sound, I've talked at length about how game-changing it can be to double attack, to dash and still attack, just to power through impossible circumstances by briefly breaking the action economy. It's incredible, and Halwyn will make excellent use of it with his high damage and high mobility both. And then at Fighter 3, we pick up the Battlemaster subclass. We've done an entire Battlemaster video before, so I'll keep it brief. But here, Heartbreaker picks up 3 maneuvers used to augment his attacks with techniques to control the battlefield and increase his damage output. These are fueled by a pool of 4 D8 superiority dice. Trip Attack gives him another method of knocking foes prone and keeping them locked down. Maneuvering Attack augments his damage on a given strike, while also allowing an ally to move up to half their speed on a reaction. And Bait and Switch allows Halwyn to switch places with an ally within 5 feet of him and grant either himself or an ally with a superiority dice's worth of extra armor class for the round. That was a mouthful. That does it for fighter levels, but the ability to stack maneuvers on top of rage and reckless attack cannot be understated. Barbarian level 6, character level 9, comes with our second Gridiron feature, and it really helps start to tie everything we built thus far together. Instinctive Block allows Heartbreaker to move up to half of his speed on a reaction and make a shove attack against any enemy when that enemy moves within 5 feet of an ally. He can do this a number of times per long rest equal to his proficiency bonus, and on a success, he knocks the target prone. This enables Halwyn to dart around the battlefield and apply crowd control outside of his own turn, reinforcing his allies and setting himself up to deal massive damage on his next turn, while potentially saving his teammate from a grapple or round of melee attacks. And then our last level, Barbarian 7, comes with 1 mainline feature and 1 Tasha's optional feature. Feral Instinct grants Heartbreaker advantage on initiative rolls, allowing him to always be quick to leap into the fray and to take control of the situation. It also allows him to act normally while under the surprised condition, provided the very first thing he does is enter his rage. And then, finally, the optional Instinctive Pounce is a fun little mobility boost, allowing Halwyn to move up to half of his speed as part of the bonus action used to enter his rage. That's just about all we have for Halwyn. A prodigy athlete fallen from grace through no fault of his own, Heartbreaker Holthrop has a brand new perspective and drastically altered circumstances. But now that he's opened his eyes again, he's found that the one thing that hasn't changed is his drive to make it to the top, to be the very best in his field. And that is very, very good news for any adventurers who find themselves darting around the field of play at his call, or anyone who finds Heartbreaker Holthrop standing between them and a rampaging monster. We hope you enjoyed this video, and we look forward to hearing about how you incorporate this Path of the Gridiron Barbarian into your own table and worlds. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe so you can stay up to date on all of our characters, how-to videos, and other content. And we'd love to hear from you in the comments if you have an idea for a character or backstory. And if you'd like to support us even further, you can head over to our Patreon page for some more behind the scenes and bonus content.